Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our panel session on renewable energies, a source of sustainable growth in Southern Africa. I'm Mourad Chouka, the regional manager for Bpifrance, covering Eastern and Southern Africa, based in Kenya. So in this session, we will explore the pivotal role of renewable energy resources that can play in driving economic development, mitigating energy crisis, and addressing climate challenges in Southern Africa. Just to introduce this session, I'll give you some figures about what's happening in Southern Africa, especially in South Africa with the energetic crisis. South Africa is the largest electricity producer on the continent, but currently facing a deficit of nearly 20% to meet the demand, leading to load shedding. You might have heard about that. So you have power cuts of 8, 10, 12 hours. Mark, maybe you'll tell us about that later. And also 85% of the electricity productions come from coal, and that's also will change, and by 2050 it might also close. So there is in South Africa a very ambitious renewable energy program initiated since 2011 with the tenders. So for about 6 gigawatts, 4 are already currently awarded, and there are still more. So it represents a huge opportunity for French companies, and also a good news that came since this also energetic crisis, a strong trend towards private sector production, with this news that now no license are required for projects under 100 megawatts. So it opens a huge door for French companies, and that's why we invited today, and I would like to thank them, Marie-Laure Mazot from STOA, CEO of STOA, and Marc IMMERMAN, the managing principal of Métier, the investing fund, to give us highlights about this topic. So, Marie-Laure Mazot, you're the CEO of STOA. STOA is an impact investor in large-scale infrastructures and energy projects in emerging and developing markets. So you've been an executive director in several companies, so in Alcatel and also COFAS, and today CEO of STOA. Marc IMMERMAN, you have also a large experience in this field. You served as CEO in a software business locally. That's where you started in London, and after you decided to focus on renewable energies, and you joined Métier in 2009, and now you're managing principal of Métier Sustainable Capital. So to start, the first question goes to Marie-Laure. So what's the STOA perspective on the potential of renewable energies in Southern Africa, considering the region's growing energy needs, particularly in South Africa?
Hello, thanks for inviting us. I think first, as an impact fund, maybe I can provide you with some figures in terms of what is our ambition. So ambition has been increased towards the next round of capital raise we are currently finalizing. And as an impact fund, we have an ambition to have a very impact project with 75% project being co-benefits climate. So in terms of the renewable energy sector, which represent today 2/3 of our portfolio and of opportunity we look after, the ambition is to provide access electricity access to now 50 million people. We reached more than 20 with our first vintage, but the idea is to accelerate this overall. That will represent 4 gigawatt of generated energy to be put on grounds by 2028, and it will be worth 6 million tons of dioxide carbon emission avoided per year. Obviously, South Africa is the largest producer of electricity. As you mentioned, highly dependent on coal, 73% of the mix, and also with recurrent load shedding up to 10 hours per day, more or less.
Not 10 hours.
Even more? I don't know. Six. At least it has most. But and what we've seen is that it has become like when we create back 2017 STOA. With Egypt, with the ban, renewable park that was under erection and development. It has begun, the country to deploy renewable energy. I think to tackle with the energy crisis, and there's been confirmed additionally roughly 9 gigawatt of new energy by 2024 and 30 by 2030, so which make it, I think, a very attractive a country, and with a lot of tenders that have been, I think, launched through what they call PPP program. So there's favorable dynamic to that. And just to make an illustration, we closed in September our participation to one of the large independent power producer in South Africa called Red Rocket. We participate to a large capital increase of $160 million to allow them to deploy, capital and support the tender that they have won.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. And yes, regarding again the needs in South Africa, Mark, are there specific sectors within the renewable energy industry in Southern Africa that is particularly attractive to investors, and what factors make these sectors promising?
Thank you. So, as you alluded to, a lot of activity now is moving towards commercial and industrial projects as opposed to only government-backed REAP. But nonetheless, the REAP we have participated in from the very beginning, so I have that experience. It was a very successful program with very large projects. So you could deploy capital at scale. You could do wind, 140 megawatts, solar, 75 megawatts, and as we were saying, 6 or 7 gigawatts already deployed. The challenge that we face now actually is the grid. So to give you the history of energy in South Africa, it's coal dependent right now. The coal comes from a part of the country actually where the solar and the wind is not good. And historically the grid was built to transport the power from the coal fields all the way down to the major metros. The best part of the country for renewable energy resource is the Northern Cape, Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, and there the grid is the weakest. So unfortunately we are now in a situation where you have a lot of land, you have very good sun, you have very good wind, but you can't send the electricity anywhere. So there's a strong focus and engagement with private sector and Eskom, the utility, to expand the grid to be able to absorb more power. But a lot of the developers have moved on to commercial and industrial projects, either over the fence or feeding through the grid on a wheeling basis. As you said at the beginning, they increased the regulatory limit originally from 5 megawatts. Now it was 100, and now there's no limit. So, and they made it much easier to do it, but still, you need the grid to transport the energy. So we do have a capacity constraint caused by the grid. To be frank with you, there are also political challenges within ESCOM who control the grid. We've been waiting for the unbundling of transmission, which really is needed to create the freedom within the sector, but it's taken much too long, although now it seems as though there is some progress on that front. So I think once you have a more liberal infrastructural environment, in particular the grid, the opportunities will increase. But just to add, South Africa, as everyone knows, has challenges from a fiscal perspective now. So I think the developers and infrastructure investors will need to take confidence from the corporate sector, not only the government. And I think that is actually a general lesson for Africa, more so than South Africa.
Thank you, Mark. But also a question regarding the debt situation of many countries in Africa, and also the increase of interest rates. Many countries are starting to more and more choose the PPP model. So what's STOA opinion about this kind of model, and is there a real potential for PPPs in Southern Africa?
I think in the renewable energy sector, you're talking about IPP and power purchase agreement, so it's a little bit different, but ultimately either you sell the electricity to the grid and to ESCOM, or now to private corporate more and more. As you know, that there's a lot of companies that are electro-intensive in South Africa, and also some mining company. So that's required also for them to be competitive. Electricity as part of their cost base. Having said that, I think the PPP have been quite developed in also other sectors, and especially I remember in the late 90s on the transportation sector. So it's not something which is new for I think South Africa. It has been very long. It has been implemented since more than 30 years, I guess, even more. But I think what we've seen is that South Africa does not, because it's quite developed, and even today's the economy is quite, needs to recover. The economic growth is very low for a country like South Africa, so it's more deflation than basically benefiting from all the resources that it benefits, and also his position in Africa. What we've seen is basically that they are the lowest to get climate finance flow amongst the African continent. Obviously, there is a willingness, and there is I think a tradition of private-public partnership, and there's been some success, as we've mentioned, with the IIPP project that are PPP, that are basically go to auction and that sell electricity to ESCOM, with now the government providing credit support to ESCOM because of the difficulty the company is encountering and not solve. But what we're seeing more now in terms of dynamic, as I mentioned, is corporate PPP taken place and PPA taken place because of the liberalization of the rules to contract between private IPPs and customers, and especially company like Rio Tinto is also looking for securing electricity at preferred, I think, cost, at least to ensure that there is limited or controlled, load shedding, because obviously the electricity is part of I think the production costs and the environment that create competition for them and being at the top level as in terms of break-even, for example, for aluminium and other metals, I would say. And what we are seeing more and more is also distributed energy at smaller scale, what we call a CNI business, or commercial and industrial clients, which are served by a small company that are basically providing PV, solar solution and services with or without battery to allow them to lower their cost also. That is taking place in South Africa. And we have one company called Candy Solar that we support, that's basically in South Africa, focus mostly on a small and medium company with a model that was established in India that proved to be very powerful, and that the team decided to implement in South Africa.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. So we understand that PPPs can be a solution, but I think every day at Métier or STOA, even Bpifrance, we see many projects every day, and unfortunately some of them are not bankable. So my question is, how can we improve and increase the pipeline of bankable projects in Southern Africa?
The golden question. It's a difficult one to answer, but I think one of the really big challenges in terms of bankability is actually capacity constraint within the government, in terms of understanding a bankable project finance construct. I also think that the lenders need to come to the party to some extent as well. Often their requirements are very stringent, more appropriate for a developed economy as opposed to a developing economy. So I think both parties do need to come to the party. And I think the more the private sector is involved in terms of the PPP aspect of the project, the greater the chance of success. The other area to consider for Africa, and if you're looking at power, and in fact all utility, be it water or waste, the scale is small. There's only 3 countries with a decent sized grid, which is South Africa, Morocco and Egypt. The rest all have very, very small grids. So if you are restrained in terms of your project size, it actually limits the project's ability to close and therefore become bankable. So there does need to be a new view, or at least a new way of making a project bankable, and I think it largely sits with the lenders. The lenders need to become a little bit more open in terms of costs and timeframes and their requirements to sign off on the projects, because everyone wants to do $1 billion project, but in Africa there's very few. I've done one. In 14 years I've done $1 billion project, that's it. So I think you do need to have a look at the overall project finance model and bring the government closer with the lenders. The equity is there, and the equity will not be the constraint.
Thank you, Mark. And Marie-Laure, about that, do you share also this opinion? You also have projects in Africa, but also in other continents. Do you think that also the potential is only on these 3 countries, South Africa, Morocco, and Egypt, or do you think that there is a real potential somewhere? How do you see differences between other region and Southern Africa?
You mean in other country in South Africa, or
in Africa, and maybe even.
I think I concur to your view that the main country are the 3 that you mentioned. There is a huge country that need more electricity and that has not been reformed, which is Nigeria, where I think distributed energy is being deployed because doing B2B business in Nigeria is still possible. You get paid. and even you can sell your company. We've been in distributed energy business that we sold after 2 years to Shell New Energy that wanted to be more green, and obviously is very well implemented in Nigeria, so that can make sense, but you have to adapt to the reality of the country. Having said that, we do have a project, as we are an emerging market fund, we also invest in renewable energy in other countries like Brazil, which is well developed, but that is currently encountering some curtailment on the Nordeste, where most of the deployment have taken place in terms of gigawatt that serve the south part of Brazil, with issue linked to transmission line too, and certainly oversupply from north to south that were not perfectly predicted. So there had been a blackout back in August 15 that has not been solved yet, but that is going to be solved moving forward. What I think is obviously what makes sense for this project to develop is the environment, the regulation also that you need to cope with. Main issue are land issue, land acquisition, land ownership, land rights, which are, I think, can create a lot of bottleneck in Africa, clearly. And all authorization that you need to implement upfront. And I think what also has killed a little bit, I think, the perspective from an investor point of view is some of the projects that were facilitated by some development banks, like the Get Feed, the Scaling Solar, which basically ended up with a price per kilowatt hour very, very aggressive, but not reflecting all the development costs that have been put in place by this agency, that were directly paid by the governments or by the public entities, but ultimately not reflecting in the price that the developer puts when they do it on a bilateral basis. So I think that has also not helped and somehow killed the market, certain markets, and that's something whereby there need to be a balance between public support, blended financing, and true price of a transaction, to be able for those going also directly to serve the market and the need to have their place.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. And yeah, very basic question. From based on your experience, Marc, what are the major challenges that developers are facing and make the projects maybe more difficult to achieve in the region in Southern Africa?
Lots. No, the project development in Africa is very complicated. Land is under a different legal system in every single country. Often you cannot locate who owns the land that you wish to partner with. You have the challenges of local laws, which once again are very different in depending on where you are in the continent. But for me, the biggest challenge that a lot of international companies don't address is the local community. So in Africa, your sites are remote almost all the time, and there you are surrounded by very rural people that are not sophisticated, and they don't really understand the scale and scope of renewable energy. And we've seen it many, many times. If you do not treat those people with respect and ensure that they benefit in a real manner from the project, it will fail, for sure. whether it is there's an act of rebellion or violence from the local community, or are they just not participative, your project will fail. So for Africa in particular, I think it's the one aspect that's unique, where you really do have to have an understanding and a desire to uplift. As an example, with the projects that we do, every single one we will disperse to the community, even in the construction. Everyone will say we will supply benefit once we get the dividends, but we always say the second people see the trucks arriving, there must be benefit. So we will build schools, we do water reticulation, we do distributed power for the local communities. You have to also study and make sure really what do they need. You know, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to build a beautiful school and everyone's going to be happy. It's not the case. Some towns there's problems with prostitution, there's drug problems. Other times it's education. So from an African perspective, I think that it's quite unique, is really understanding your neighbors and your partners, which is what the community is. Otherwise, the project development, the risk is, I think, common. In Africa, though, it's the people.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And we've been talking about a lot about South Africa regarding the energetic crisis, but in the region, in Namibia, Botswana, are there also opportunities there? We're talking a lot about green hydrogen, for instance, in Namibia. From a métier or STOA perspective, do you see real opportunities in these countries?
Sure. So Namibia, I think, is very attractive right now. I can tell you that the strength of the sun in Namibia and the real top part of South Africa is the same as the desert, Mojave Desert in America. It's the best in the world. So you have that cost benefit for solar power. Namibia is a very stable country. Politically, it is secure. You do have currency risk because it's linked to the rand, but you also have a port now with oil and gas discovery. So for me personally, Namibia is very attractive. Challenge is it's simply a very small country. I think there's 2.5 million people. Botswana is similar. It's a very rich country, a very small country, politically stable. I believe the opportunity actually is a linkage through them into South Africa, where you have your buyers, ultimately your economy to buy the power. Once again, the grid has to be expanded. So I think you can only get 200 megawatts transported from Namibia to Botswana to South Africa. So someone has to make the big investment to expand the grid. Today, if you had a gigawatt or 2 gigawatts of capacity, the solar would be deployed in Namibia and sold to South Africa and Botswana and Zimbabwe.
Yeah. And Marie-Laure, do you also share this opinion about...
I think there is quite a lot of opportunity in Southern Africa. What I think is also beneficial is that you have a grid connection amongst the country with a system that allowed basically to transport and to export, import, mainly to export to South Africa, electricity production. So that, and there's more and more company that's starting to trade on the market, on the free market also. We see also opportunity on the transmission lines. There is some project to increase the transmission network across the region. So I think it will come soon. We are not looking per se at hydrogen because there is a very, very big animal. We think that for us, hydrogen project is useful when it serves local industries through electrolyzer and production of green energy in the country. We are not going to the mastodon project that we see of $1 billion of dollars that's required also not only renewable energy electrolyzer, then transform the hydrogen into ammoniac to be transported to European or other served market, and then retransfer to do electricity. So it's a long chain.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. And since we are also here to encourage and push more French companies to take all these opportunities. That's our mission in Bpifrance, but also your mission today, to encourage more French companies. Do you see many French companies in this projects, and what will be your advice to, just to have French companies to participate and take win all these tenders in South Africa, especially?
I think in the renewable energy sectors, there's quite a lot of big companies and big players, utilities, European utilities, including French, that are present in Cape Town, because that's the city of renewable, where everybody is. It's easy life also, great. But obviously, that's where everybody is fixed today. What I think in terms of my advice, because I've been there with some investments since we have been set up back in 2019, and I've been working there for much longer. I think there is a cultural difference that you need also to, understand. It takes time to get confidence of people. You need also, there is also the gender diversity is a very important aspect in the country. The law, the regulation is not always easy. I remember when we started having our first board in some of the companies with, the annual salary increase, which was following inflation each time plus. Why I had a reference in France, which was a negotiation, but not at all linked to inflation until now. Now it's a little bit different. So it stuck me a little bit, because it was not viewed as, what is your performance and how you are evaluated, based on your objectives. But it was, you need to follow the inflation and the benchmark of the company, and you are in this quartile or this quartile. So if you want to maintain the people and the quality of person internally, which is care, you need to make sure that you retain people. And just to say, there is I think an employment of more than 30% in South Africa, which is huge, and which is a problem. And I think the second point, which I've not found the clue yet, and it's difficult, and it's creates also a lot of, I think you need to follow it quickly, is black empowerment, which is required by regulation, and depending on the sector. So either you need to have 30% ownership of black empowerment company, or even more in other sectors. Sometimes I think in the renewable energy, I see even up to 49%. The issue is that these people that have been engaged in that area do not have all the resources to support these big investments. And sometimes they fail their, commitment. So you get stuck with the need to find out new partners, and they are not numerous and serious ones, to be able to follow your commitment, but also to be able to comply with the regulations. So, my message is on that part: be very careful, take advice, follow them very closely. Usually you fund them, with pref shares, so they take part of the investment, but basically you're backing them also, because they have not, the dry power to follow basically the investment. But you need to have, good people that are very serious, and that are able to, meet their commitments, that are on compliance, clean. And that's not always easy. Yeah?
Thank you, Marie-Laure. In few words, Marc, I know that probably France will face South Africa in quarter-final of the World Cup, so you might not give advice to French companies, but I hope you can a bit. So what will be your advice to French companies to help them to win this all these tenders?
So everything you said is very much accurate. I mean, for me, my passion is to take on early stage risk. And that's not just in South Africa or Southern Africa. I think it's Africa as well. It's very easy, us included, to wait until financial close and everything's been done and all the risk has been taken and put your money in. But there need to be more people that are prepared to say, I believe this is coming and I'm prepared to make an investment, whether it's time or money, to get these projects off the ground. And the advice is not just for the French, but I think for everyone. It is very important to understand the local dynamics at play in each country, and Africa is complicated like that. Every country is different. People often think it's Africa, one continent, everything the same, but it isn't. They're small, they're challenges, and often it's for a very big investor, a developed world investor like STOA, it doesn't make sense for them. The economies aren't big enough, the projects aren't big enough. So I think you need to have the right profile of investor in terms of risk appetite, in terms of ideal ticket size, and of course return profile. But if you are prepared to take that risk and you're prepared to be patient, Africa will deliver.
Thank you, Marc.
And in the World Cup as well, because it's finished.
Hope not. So we have time maybe for one or two questions. So the audience, feel free if you have any question. Come on, we won't conclude on that. No. No one? Okay, anything you want to add on that, or?
Yeah, I think maybe in terms of what we do investment, we are minority investor. So we usually team up with other investors, either utilities, but also developers. I think what we found, obviously, in South Africa is that they are good, very good, I think, funds that are specialized, that have been in the market for a long time, some more than 30 years, that I met back when I started back to work in Africa. And usually we share the same analysis in terms of risk, and we quite cooperate well to develop projects. So we've been working with a number of them since we've been set up. So it's only 6 years ago when we started from scratch. So meaning that is, people are willing to have to develop close link and support, early stage development and get company to a large, to scale up quite easily. So that has been for us a journey we found very interesting, attractive, and that provide a lot of energy.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. We might have a question.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Only one question regarding energy transportation. I understood that it's really difficult and often due to the long distance. Do you think, nowadays or in the near future, what will be a solution? Is there something coming up in terms of development or cost-efficient solution, or maybe underground, any solution which can help and which can make it easy in the near future to transport? Thank you.
I think I'll reverse the question. I think the innovation is to not to transport, is to have more distributed generation close to the demand for the energy. And renewable energy lets you do it. Solar can be done at a very small scale. The challenge is now for the cost on the storage. So I think the innovation is going to be in the storage of electricity, not so much the transport of electricity. Transport of energy, which we were saying earlier in terms of hydrogen, it's a very topical topical matter, and I agree everything you said. It doesn't make sense to transport hydrogen or electricity over a very extensive distance. So I think the innovation actually has to happen in terms of the demand and the supply of the energy.
Thank you, Marie-Laure. Thank you, Marc. It was a pleasure. And of course, feel free to contact Métier, STOA, if you have any question. And of course, Bpifrance. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.